I'd like to welcome everyone to this evening's edition of the Alumni Speaker Series. I am Annie Puffett. I am the Director of Career Development here at Upper Iowa University, located on the Fayette campus, assisting all of our university students, alums, faculty, and staff as well. So on behalf of the university community and Dr. Duffy, I'd like to welcome Jeremy Masterson to our speaker series this evening. I would encourage anyone that has any comments, questions, anything for Jeremy this evening to please drop them in the comment section on the Facebook Live. I will be monitoring that section and will be asking those questions as I see them come up as well. So let's just introduce Jeremy. Jeremy Masterson is a 2009 graduate from our Des Moines Center. He was a finance major. And so welcome, Jeremy. I know that there are a lot of things that you want to talk about this evening. So first, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm married. My wife and I have been together for 20 years last August. I don't look both ways when I cross the street anymore, and she hates it when I tell that joke. I've got two kids, a 15-year-old who's a freshman in high school and a 12-year-old who is, actually she'll be 12 on Saturday. Her birthday is on the 23rd, and she's in 6th grade. I've been an attorney since 2013. I graduated December of 12, took the bar in 13 and was licensed there. Prior to that, I've had a lot of jobs. I've roofed houses. I sold soda pop for Coca-Cola, drove a side load truck, did landscaping. And from 2003 to 2011, was a member of the Armed Services and deployed on a peacekeeping mission to Kosovo back in 2003, 2004. I like long walks in the park, quite nice by the fire, and the movie The Notebook. That's me.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for your service as well. So the topic of your conversation tonight, the title that you had kind of given it was a non-traditional path. So I know that your path was non-traditional. Can you talk a little bit about your path to Upper Iowa and what brought you to UIU?
Sure. Well, so the term non-traditional student was not one I was familiar with prior to becoming a student. But it really fits kind of the path, not only to Upper Iowa, but the overall academic course that I found myself on. So when I came back from deployment in 2004, I got a job with a Coca-Cola distributor out in Waukee, Iowa. And after a couple of years, I knew I couldn't throw pop forever. I wasn't sure what that meant, whether it was a finance degree or selling insurance or something, but I knew I needed to do something. I had the GI Bill. And so I looked at a lot of colleges. I looked at mostly night programs because at the time, we were married, we had a house. The idea of, just quitting school and or just quitting work and going to school full time just wasn't something that was going to be in the cards for us. And Upper Iowa had the best mix of practical instruction from individual professors who were kind of in whatever field they were teaching. The class schedule met the needs that I had, and ultimately it was a fantastic decision. So Upper Iowa was part of a long list of schools that I looked at, and ultimately was the one that I pulled the trigger on.
All right. Upon completing your degree with Upper Iowa, you went on to pursue your law degree and eventually opened your own law firm after passing the bar. Can you talk about how a degree in finance from UIU prepared you for law school and what it meant for you to open your own law firm?
Absolutely. So this is kind of a fun story because I'm not the kid that wanted to be a lawyer when he grew up. In fact, I was about halfway through the program at Upper Iowa, and I didn't know what I wanted to do next. Was it a master's degree? Get some serious licenses and sell insurance? I didn't know. And there were two professors that I had at the Des Moines campus, and in talking to them about options with a finance degree after the undergrad, law school came up, and they kind of talked me into taking the LSAT. So I took the LSAT on a whim, with the idea that if I did well enough, maybe I'll apply to a law school. I did okay, so I applied to Drake. Kind of like choosing Upper Iowa, I couldn't quit the world and relocate for law school, so Drake was the only school I applied to, kind of with the idea if they accept me, I'll go. and son of a gun, they let me in. So my wife and I had about a year to kind of reset finances and make things happen. And then I became more of a traditional student, still non-traditional in how I landed in law school. But I was competing now with what I saw as professional students, individuals who took a traditional path, high school, college, law school, life. And so I give that background a little bit to enhance the non-traditional path to Upper Iowa, but also I didn't miss a beat going to law school. The rigor of the program, the finance degree program there at Upper Iowa prepared me to be able to compete with students that had been going to school for the better part of 4 or 5 years prior to attending law school. And I was able to integrate right in with them. Good study habits. I treated it like a job. You show up in the morning, you do your work, you go home. And the skills for studying, for consuming information and being able to kind of put that into application, or go through the testing procedures and study for finals and write the papers. I was able to compete very well with my contemporaries that were kind of traditional professional students up until that point. And so was really happy with what I received from Upper Iowa. And it really wasn't until kind of getting into that first, almost second semester of law school that you realize that you weren't just a night student, you weren't just an old guy in the back of the classroom. You were able to have a little bit of life experience, and the curriculum that Upper Iowa had kind of put in front of me for my degree program set me up for a lot of success once I was a student. The second part, what does it mean to open my own law firm? That's a tough one to answer, because there really wasn't a question. When I went to law school, because I was kind of non-traditional, the idea of just being a worker bee for somebody didn't really excite me. And so very early in my legal career, I recognized that I was probably going to hang a shingle. And so I took a trade school approach to law school. I tried to get internships that would give me experience. I tried to get into court as much as I could, gather form documents, seek out mentors. But what does it mean to open my own law firm? I think I was too dumb to know any better. You just don't know what you don't know. But it was a fantastic ride. It was one of those things that just kind of happened, and we looked up, and it had been almost 8 years, and now we're my former law partner and I, we both moved our practices over to Allers and Cooney, where I'm at now. But that 8-year run just flew by. It's cool to have your name on the door. It's not cool to have to cut all the checks to pay for your name on the door. But that was a really proud time professionally for me, and it really all started because I took a chance, and Upper Iowa took a chance on me to kind of get that finance degree. And so a lot of the relationships that I built at Upper Iowa, still to this day, I call on every once in a while and use as mentors, and that network is relatively strong. And so, what does it mean to me to open my own law firm? Probably means more to my kids, so that they can say, oh, dad's name was on the door, my name's on the door with the kids. But for me, it was really just kind of a natural progression of what I had started at Upper Iowa, kind of building and charting my own path, and remarkably fun ride. It was a good time.
All right. You talk about mentoring and networking, and that kind of ties in a lot to relationship building. In your profession as a lawyer, there is a lot of relationship building that takes place. Can you talk about the importance of relationship building in any field, and what are some ways that individuals can do that, can expand on that, can build on relationship building?
Sure. So that's a great question, because relationships are key in any I think professional setting. One of the things from a law standpoint that I find interesting on the relationship side is there's lots of different types of relationships, and they all kind of feed into each other. The relationships that you have with your professors while you're in school, or the bosses that you have in some of your first jobs, they're building the foundations of who you're going to be and how you're going to interact with individuals. Because when we think about relationships, if we can capitalize that R and turn it into kind of a defined term, relationships can mean a lot of things. In the legal sense, it's important to have relationships with the community, because a lot of times that's where your cases are going to come from. That may be where your mentors come from. But the type of relationship you have with a prospective client is much different than the relationship that you'll have perhaps with a formal mentor or a boss. And so recognizing the importance of the need for the relationship, but also recognizing how different relationships are going to require different inputs from you, different maintenance from you, different follow-up from you. When we think about building relationships in some of those fields, or teeing that stuff up to make them the most memorable and the most effective, what I found is I like to try to build relationships with people I enjoy. If it's somebody that I would have a beer with on Friday and they just happen to do business that's in line with the things that I do, that's an added bonus. And recognizing that it's okay to not have or not continue certain relationships. Very early in the career, you're hungry, you got bills to pay, and so you might seek out more relationships, or stay in relationships or foster relationships that probably need to just kind of die on the vine, either because the personalities don't gel, maybe it's because the relationship is built solely on a foundation of money. Either you're beholden to them because of it, or they're beholden to you. And so it's important to kind of recognize what that relationship is, how you're benefiting them, how it benefits you. And then from there, you'll be able to kind of determine, how you need to feed that relationship. And then I use a plant analogy a lot. Early in my career, I was given a plant by an individual that I was in Rotary with, and that plant died. That relationship also suffered. And so I give plants as gifts now. And if I'm ever given a plant, I keep it alive as absolutely long as possible. And for me, it's kind of a metaphor of you've got to take care of the relationships. They don't just happen on their own. And once you've kind of built that, it's really up to you to then foster it and turn it into something that is beneficial for kind of both involved. But yeah, I don't think now, in today's world, even with COVID and how remote things have been and people working from home, that the relationship aspect is any less important. And if anything, it just requires more effort, because you don't always have those opportunities to just catch up around the water cooler in the break room. And so being intentional with those that are in your circle, and then being intentional how you maintain those folks in your circle are probably some of the most important things you can do to build and maintain relationships.
Absolutely. Switching gears here now a little bit, you went from opening your own law firm to now practicing in one of the oldest law firms in the state. Can you talk about that transition and what that has taught you from having your own firm to now being part of someone else's?
Absolutely. Well, to tie in a little bit on like the relationship thing we just talked about, the types of relationships that I needed to cultivate were very, very different. We went from a two-person law firm whose primary objective was to generate work, to a much larger law firm that was already well-versed in work generation. And so it wasn't as important to go out and kind of beat the pavement and find relationships that could then lead to, billable work or meaningful client engagement. It was more important to focus on relationships internally. Coworkers, what are they doing? Introducing yourself to staff, building those internal relationships that will, hopefully foster, good feelings and a collegial work environment for years. And so the types of relationships that I found myself seeking out and kind of fostering, that was a huge change. Process and procedures, we went from being able to make decisions by yelling at each other down the hall to having to plan a little bit and put together the spreadsheets and play the office politics and do a little bit of the planning, because there's now layers of bureaucracy and there are more people that are impacted by decisions. And so the distance from the information to where the decision is made changed considerably, in some respects for the better. When we were operating our own firm, I still cleaned the restrooms. I'm the guy that washed the windows. If the computer broke, my partner fixed it. We balanced our own bank account. Now we have an accounting department. We have an IT department. So, being able to take some of those kind of non-work things off the plate and focus primarily on the craft of law has been really, really excited. It's also taught me a little bit of humility, because you do kind of go from being the master of your own kingdom to needing to be a little bit more humble and to being more patient, understanding that things take a little bit more time. But those things are, I think, kind of germane to just about any type of change. We're lifelong learners. Change is a constant, and we should seek that out. It's been a big adjustment, but a very solid adjustment. They do really cool work here, and I'm able to touch cases that prior, as a 2-person firm in Waukee, were only academic. We're not going to generate the types of cases that a 130-year-old law firm is going to be able to generate. And so professionally, it's been remarkably beneficial just to my individual skill set, being surrounded by such high quality and high caliber attorneys.
Was there a certain thing that kind of, I know you had mentioned that, when you got the law degree, your kind of focus was to open your own law firm and you wanted to do that. Was there something that, that you just kind of were feeling, or something you wanted to do that like caused you to not want to own your own firm anymore and go into something different? I know it kind of all happened during when COVID was kind of happening too. Right. So was there a particular reason that you and your colleague shut down your own law firm and joined forces elsewhere?
So that's a great question. And this is kind of very similar to my law school experience, where I didn't plan on being a lawyer. We got a call from a recruiter in December of 2019. And she wouldn't tell us who she was calling on behalf of, but she said, "Hey, I've been tasked with a brief. I'm trying to fill some positions. Are you guys interested in a conversation?" At the time, we had just signed a new 5-year lease. We were operating out of temporary space because our office was down to studs. We were doing a remodel. We were scheduling meetings with vendors for new websites. We were working on job descriptions because we were going to hire new staff. We were planning the next 10 years of our law firm when the call came in. Not planning to move, not on our radar at all, but sure, we'll talk to your mystery people. It ended up being some remarkably nice folks with the Allers and Cooney Law Firm, and we met with them in January. And the initial conversation, we really didn't talk business at all. It was, who are you and what are you and, what brings you here? Really, it was more of a culture fit for both sides. And throughout that process, both sides kind of took the approach of, we'll take it to the next step, and then we'll look at each other and say, do we want to continue? And both sides wanted to continue. So we did quite a bit of due diligence from January until March of 2020, when the world changed a little bit. Everything kind of went on the shelf, and we picked it back up April, May, finished the rest of the due diligence. And in September of 2020, formal offer came through, and we merged our practices and brought everything over in October of 2020. And when we think about the why, a lot of it had to do with the stability that comes with being with such a established firm, and really kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity to obtain a type of mentorship that is very difficult to get organically on your own. They have some remarkable attorneys here, and the prospect of being able to kind of work under their tutelage and work with them and touch the types of cases that a firm like this can was really, really exciting professionally. And we kind of felt that, we had a great run, but we were already at a fork in the road with where we were going to be as a firm. We were already having conversations of what the next 10 years would look like. And so in a lot of ways, this moving to Allers and Cooney was really just a different way to look at what the next 10 years of practice looks like. And ultimately, our entire team came over. My law partner is still here. He practices wills and estate planning. Our legal assistant, our paralegal, she came with us. Sadly, she's in Florida now, better weather, but greatly missed here. But we brought the whole team over, and we're able to integrate a lot of what we do here. But definitely not something we were looking for. Very happy that we took the chance though and had the conversation.
Right. So leading people in many cases is part of many individuals' career paths. And I think many individuals watching this evening can think of some lessons while trying to develop those leadership skills. What are some ways that you would encourage others to build on leadership skills?
That is an awesome question. My leadership philosophy is somewhat skewed because of my time in the military. So, when when I hear leadership, I automatically go to knife hand, and I try to, holster that and keep Sergeant Masterson at bay. His leadership style is very different than Attorney Masterson leadership style. But there is one lesson, I think, between those two worlds that really kind of sticks with me. And it's not my saying. I had a commander say it years ago, and it's mission first, people always. And I don't think I appreciated it the very first time I heard it, but the more leadership positions I was in and the more positions that I was in to be led, it became really, really clear that I could feel when those above me truly cared about what I was doing, how I was doing it, where I was doing it. And it was more than just trying to, placate and the pleasantries of the morning. How's it going? Did you have a great Easter? They really cared about my well-being. And in doing so, it would always create this powerful kind of esprit de corps. You always want to work harder for somebody that you feel truly cares for you. And if you have the idea that you're always taking care of your people, you're always coming into work to try to make the person to your left and to your right better, you're always trying to enhance how somebody else's day is going, those people skills are always going to enhance the mission. The mission is going to happen because you've empowered your team to feel appreciated and to work those long hours and to come in on the weekends, because it may be something that has to happen, but they're not doing it because you're telling them that you have to come in on Saturday. They're doing it because they bought into the mission, because they believe in the task that needs to be completed. And so the idea of mission first, people always is something that I really, try to live when I can. And also servant leadership. If you're in a leadership position because you want to insulate those underneath you, or because you want to try to make life better for your subordinates, or because you can see a big picture where somebody else can't, and you want to help that organization, reach that next rung on the ladder, you're going to be much more successful, because now it's not top down. I think a lot of us have probably seen the diagrams or the photos of manager versus leader. The manager is at the back of the pack, cracking the whip. The leader's in front, helping everybody pull. And it's easy for us to kind of look at that and laugh and point, but there's a lot of truth to it. If you're in the trenches with the individuals that you are asking to do certain things, those jobs are going to take care of themselves. And it's amazing, by trusting the people underneath you, by setting good examples, by doing what you say you're going to do, those things trickle down, and leadership becomes a lot more organic and a lot less stressful.
For sure. And leadership kind of ties in a little bit to professional development as well, which is the next topic that I have here. One of the things that we emphasize within our office is the importance of professional development and how it can help lead to continued success and advancement in one's chosen field. What are some ways that professional and employee development have helped you succeed? And what advice would you give others looking to advance in their career paths, or even change career paths altogether?
Well, so I've changed careers a lot. Someday I'll figure out what I want to be when I grow up, or at least my wife hopes that I'll figure out what I want to be when I grow up. But I like to think of professional development as more than just continuing education or going to a certain seminar. At the end of the day, and I think I've already said this, we are lifelong learners. And if you start every day with that premise, professional development can happen in really, really unique and interesting ways. Perhaps, to start, I think it's very important that somebody is very honest and does an accurate self-assessment of where they think their strengths and their weaknesses are, in order to identify, what opportunities you should seek out to develop yourself personally or professionally. I think you have to have a good idea of what your goals are. And before you can set your goals, you have to have an idea of where your strengths and weaknesses are, so that you can either enhance your strengths or improve your weaknesses. And so seeking challenges, once you've identified kind of, your pluses and your minuses, it could be running a 5K. Professional development to me sometimes is a week-long trip to the Boundary Waters with no cell phone, because that's time that you can think about what comes next. You can kind of get in your own head and process, meditate in a sense. will things into existence and come back with a stronger focus. And I think that's just as important as going to that 3-day leadership seminar in Austin, Texas, with breakout rooms and high energy speakers. I think both of those activities are just as important to develop professionally, because you have to develop the whole person. It's very difficult when you start mixing in, the high octane professional world, and you're trying to maintain relationships, you're trying to deliver work products, you're trying to be a good employee or a good boss. You have to have more than just the skill set. You have to be able to do more than fill in the spreadsheet. You have to be able to interact with people. You have to be able to manage your time effectively. And so professional development, once you've identified kind of your strengths and your weaknesses, can be tailored so that you can seek out opportunities that enhance your ability to time keep, or make you a better listener. You can pick up some active listening skills, or in my sense, I'm a business transactional attorney. So professional development could be, a course on series LLCs, or, staying on top of laws as they change and come out. And so it all starts with that individual assessment of, what am I good at? What do I need to work at? Then from there, professional development can become a lot more clear. On the employee side, I'm a huge advocate for training those around you up. And a lot of this comes from my time in the service. Everybody below you knows the job of the person above, and vice versa. And so you're always in a state of flux training your replacement. The idea of the CEO and the CFO, CFO, why are we spending all this training dollars on people if they're going to leave? And the CEO, what if we don't spend it and they stay? That finds a home in the business world. And if you're constantly developing those that show aptitude and desire, if you're coaching those individuals up and you're identifying that they either have more capabilities or they have a desire to really hone in and focus on a specific area, then that's something that you should encourage. And so, if you're owning your own business or if you're part of a team, I think it's just as important to identify professional development opportunities for yourself as it is to identify professional development for those that are around you or your subordinates. Because, if everybody is kind of rowing in the same direction and everybody has this, I'm going to advance myself mindset, those types of developmental, professional development things really kind of take care of themselves.
All right, thank you. Over the course of your career, you've been involved in some hiring and firing decisions. What advice can you give students and alums alike who might be in the middle of the job search now or in the near future about what to keep in mind as they go through the hiring process with any organization, regardless of their career field?
Well, my guess is some of the thoughts I have here will not be new. And I strongly suspect a lot of the things that they're hearing right now from either the career development office or individuals that are in that hiring field right now. The first one that comes to mind that it should be really obvious is don't lie. And fibs or lies, if don't over embellish a skill set. If you're proficient in Word but not Excel, then don't say you're great at all Word products. We have hired people that, on paper have all of the criteria, and they get into the role and they crash and burn because they fibbed a little bit on what their capabilities actually were. And it's okay to not know an answer. I appreciate an interviewee saying, I don't know the answer to that, but I will find out and get back to you, more than I appreciate somebody trying to kind of shoehorn an answer in, because you can smell that. The person on the other side of the table has a pretty good idea of what answer they're seeking, and normally can kind of flesh some of those things out. And so, just being genuine, being honest, being upfront with your skill set, I think is really, really critical. Keep your social media under wraps. Keep it locked down. Don't post it if you don't want a judge to see it, or me if you're going to sit in an interview with me. The number of times that we would pull social media for potential applicants, law clerks, paralegals, and find things that immediately disqualified them from an opportunity for employment, it's staggering. The types of content that people post out there would very quickly take them off of the list. So just be aware, even if it's not the beer bottles and the bongs, Sometimes even, heavily political posts sometimes can be really, really jarring. And that leads me to my kind of third point, which is do your homework. Figure out who's interviewing you. Make sure you know everything that you can find out about that company. Make sure you find out everything you can about the position. If it's coming through a recruiter, drill that recruiter. Gather as much information as you can about every aspect of that business. The internet's a great tool. The amount of public records that are out there and accessible to an individual is staggering. Go to individuals' LinkedIn page, identify, maybe some connections of individuals that they know and they're going to probably be checking on you if you provide references to them. If you identify that they have a connection on LinkedIn that you also know, maybe it's not a bad idea to call them and, kind of do a reverse reference check of some sort. Hey, I'm interviewing over here. Anything I should know about this person? And so you can, again, don't lie, but you can tailor your presentation to fit, the culture of that, or you can identify very quickly, maybe this isn't going to be a good fit culturally for me. But you're not going to know that unless you really do your homework. It always surprised me. And I would say it's probably 50-50. We would always ask the question, well, how'd you hear about us? Or tell me what you know about my law firm. And the number of individuals that would just spout stuff off of the website, kind of mind-boggling. And there's some really good content that's out there, or they wouldn't take that next step. You could tell that they looked at your bio page, but that's it. We really liked people who took that extra step, who went further, who connected dots in the bio page. Oh, you went to Upper Iowa. Hey, I know so-and-so, and found those ways to personalize the data that they found in doing their homework. So, when we think about keeping in mind in the hiring process, don't lie, keep your social media locked in and under wraps, and do your homework. Know what you're getting yourself into. And if you've done that honest self-assessment from a skill set standpoint, hopefully you're putting yourself in positions that are going to kind of enhance some of those skills or be good fits for you.
What would you say, and this is part of the job search as well, to someone who's looking at a job description and they don't necessarily meet all of the qualifications? There's like one or two things in that job description that they're not qualified in or they don't have experience in, but they're really interested in this position. Do you still encourage them to apply even though they don't meet all of the criteria?
So this is where I swear lawyers can give yes or no answers, but this isn't one of those times. If the requirement is, you have to have a Juris Doctorate in order to apply, those types of things definitely don't. If it's, you need certain number of years in management, or you need a certain type of qualification from, say, like a programming standpoint, and it's like a 4 or 6 week certificate course, something that you could easily accomplish after you were hired, or hey, I just signed up for this, I'm going to be doing it now. I say apply for the job. Some of our best hires were individuals that didn't necessarily have the credentials for the position that they were at. In fact, the paralegal that moved over to Allers and Cooney with us didn't have a paralegal certificate, had not gone to school for legal assistant training, was in the middle of kind of working on a degree. But had we said we need a paralegal with 3 years of experience and a paralegal certificate, maybe she wouldn't have applied. And she ended up being probably one of our best hires. Because she had aptitude, she was motivated to succeed. She was smart, and she could take on additional tasks. So we were able to train that individual up. So I absolutely think that if those qualifications are not germane to the job, you have to have a license, or you have to be that type of stuff. I absolutely think apply, because the worst that they can say is no. And there's a really good chance that they'll at least bring you in for the interview. And when they do, again, going back to that previous, do your homework, make sure that you have a remarkable answer as to either why you applied because you don't have that experience, or what in your life could qualify or connect those dots so that you could say, well, I don't have the documented experience. I don't have 4 years of XYZ, but I did do dot, dot, dot. And so you can connect life experience to some of those things to not necessarily completely wash the fact that you don't have the actual requirement, but maybe water down the fact that it's not there. And I always think of, what was the movie with Will Smith, financial planner, Road to Happiness, I think it was.
Yes.
Pursuit of Happiness. Thank you. I always think about the scene where he's sitting at the table, no dress shirt. What would I tell somebody what would I tell somebody that I hired and didn't come in with a shirt XYZ? Well, it must have been wearing a nice pair of pants. That's the kind of mindset I think that you should have. Is you walk in, the job is mine, and if there's something that doesn't fit or a qualification that I don't have, I'm going to do my darndest to identify other life experience or other maybe educational opportunities that I have that either should qualify, or at the very minimum, that the person interviewing me should take note of, as far as my desire to do well in that job. But no, just because you don't hit every single mark, my thought would be absolutely apply.
All right, thank you. I know that's a common question that we either get in our office or something that we try to tell students and alums is, you might not meet some of those specific smaller pieces of criteria, but still encourage them to apply as well.
I will add one thing to that.
Yeah.
Something that we would do sometimes, and I picked this up from another individual. We may not necessarily list out the criteria for the job, but we may list out what we want to see when somebody applies.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And those types of things, a lot of employers will use that process as a filter to see if you have good reading comprehension and you're following directions. It's the old, the very first instruction on the test is read the entire test before starting. And only one person, the very last question is stand up and turn your paper in. So, if the employer says, this is how we want to receive applications, if the employer says, make sure this information accompanies, follow that type of stuff to a T, because we would absolutely use that as a filtering mechanism just to see if people could follow directions. But yeah, good stuff.
Very good. Making connections and networking with others is so important in helping with advancement in our fields and pursuing our dreams. What would you say is your biggest piece of advice to making connections, and how can others do that?
Well, I like how you use the term connections, because for me, that is really what it's about. Like, you have lots of different types of relationships, and we already kind of hit on some of those different ways that manifests itself. But when you think about connections, for me, that goes one layer beyond just a relationship. You're trying to humanize a relationship. You're trying to, maybe identify what their favorite color is. These are individuals that you might actually remember their birthday. And in those circumstances, the best advice I can give somebody is to be genuine, and find ways to connect with people that enhance the relationship. And so an example of that could be, if you are just really, really philanthropic and you love doing, outreach programs, then, maybe join a Rotary Club. And those types of individuals may just start from a relationship standpoint because you're all in this Rotary group together, but you'll be able to turn those relationships into meaningful connections because of the shared experience. If you're passionate about, home ownership, Habitat for Humanity has stuff. If you love animals, volunteer your time with the Rescue League. When you think about connections, you're trying to make it a little bit more meaningful. And the best way that I've ever found to do that is to find ways to actually connect with people. Join a cycling club, join the book club, do something that's either out of your comfort zone a little bit or forces you to interact more than just superficially with somebody else. Have a hard conversation, debate somebody about politics, find circles that you can feel comfortable sharing, open dialogue with. And if you do that from a place of just being genuine, it's going to really enhance those relationships. If you don't like animals, but you think that you're going to be able to generate a lot of work by volunteering at the Humane Society, you're probably not going to have great connections because you're not really being genuine to what you're passionate about. And that can take time for some folks. Some folks don't know yet what they're passionate about, or they don't know yet what, is going to kind of light that fire underneath them. And so trying different things is really, really important. And what I have found is the more you put yourself out there, the more you say yes, the more you pick up the phone, the more you show you're willing to assist somebody else with no real benefit back to you, the stronger those connections are going to be. And some of the best friendships that I have now started because I gave them a business card at a chamber event 10 years ago, but I fostered the relationship. We found common interests. We did stuff together. And we were able to cultivate a connection that was much more than simply just referring work back and forth. And those ultimately are some of the most meaningful professional relationships I have to date.
Wonderful. Changing gears a little bit here to career readiness. It's a very hot topic in career services and higher education in general, and human resource offices as well. What competencies, I know we've kind of talked about some of those of the 8 core competencies of career readiness. What competencies do you feel are most important in helping one excel in their career path, and why?
So this is an interesting one because I can change my answer depending on the lens that I'm looking at the question at, right? So if I look at it from the standpoint of hiring a team member, a support staff team member, associate attorney, a partner, the very first thing I'm probably going to look for is teamwork. Does this person have the ability to interact with others? If you cross that threshold, then I might go to communication. This person may be great as a team player, but they lack the communication skills to be either a main leader or they lack the communication skills. They want to be a team player, but they rub everybody the wrong way. And that's not necessarily bad. Some of those things that you can coach, but for me, number one is always teamwork. Do you understand that you're part of a larger concept? Or, do you want to be the survivor? Are you so competitive that everything is a competitive game and you have to win? For the environments that I play in, transactional work, business work, having a winning mindset is helpful, but the ability to be a team member is way more important. If we move from teamwork to communication, that's fantastic. If I'm hiring somebody for a technical role, I may be less concerned about the teamwork, and I may focus primarily on the requisite skills, the technology component. Can you do the task at hand? And then from there, maybe move into critical thinking. And so for certain roles, my 1-2 might be technology, critical thinking. For a staff position and associate, it may be teamwork, communication, and then the rest we can kind of fill in. So one of these days, I swear I'll do a yes, no, or just like 1, 2, 3. But for me, context really, really matters. And here, going back to if the individual does that self-assessment, then they may recognize, hey, I'm a great team player. I'm remarkable on critical thinking. Professionalism is off the charts. I know how to tie, 3 different knots on my tie. I can tie a bow tie. I understand the difference between casual, business formal. I shake hands with a firm grip. I make good eye contact. I speak when I need to. I use crisp, very direct vernacular with very little flair or foul language. But I'm not that great on technology. And so if you've done that self-assessment, you can look at those core competencies and identify, hey, for this particular role that I'm applying for, I'm going to be able to really sell these 4 core competencies. But I'm going to have to find a way to enhance my willingness to get better in 1 or 2 of these. And maybe it comes to the point where you do that self-assessment and the role that you're going for is so technology heavy that your inexperience in that, could create a problem. And it could create a scenario where you're not going to be successful day one. And the sooner you can identify those, the better. I also think that this is the making of a remarkably intelligent question from the person that's being interviewed to the potential employer. Something to the effect of, hey, when I look at, my skills and my capabilities, I break it down into 8 core competencies. which ones do you think would be the most applicable for the position that I'm going to that I'm applying for? And break those things out. And so I think that that's a really smart way to bring some of those things full circle and either enhance a point that you've already made or put it back on the employer to make them think a little bit about, well, I hadn't really thought about that. What gives you an opportunity for dialogue? And that's always something that's good in an interview.
Absolutely. You've kind of talked a little bit about this in kind of and how you've answered this and kind of the topics that you've done with the competencies. So are there any other ways that you would encourage others to improve the skills and competencies to ensure that they're career ready?
Sure. So to reinforce that lifelong learner mindset is continually seek opportunities to enhance those things. When I teach law office management at the law school. When I teach that class, I talk about an email that I sent very early in my career, and I call it the new kid on the block email. In fact, that's the subject line, new kid on the block. And I had identified probably, 50 different attorneys in the greater Des Moines area, Urbandale, Waukee, everybody. And they all got the same new kid on the block email. And it was effectively, hey, I just opened a law firm. This is what I like to do. Can I meet you for coffee and talk? And seeking out those types of, very, formal mentorship opportunities, or at the very least, just making connections with individuals in the community became very, very profitable down the road. Some of those relationships turned into lifelong connections. And to this day, we still pass work back and forth. And it all started because I took a chance and just reached out and asked for an opportunity for the conversation. And so the best thing that you can do, or the best thing that advice that I can give to encourage somebody in that realm is just to seek out opportunities for them. Get out of your comfort zone, identify individuals in whatever sphere of professional influence you want to be in that know more than you do, and be close to them. In a lot of ways, you are who you hang with. And so find ways to get into those circles, find ways to add value to those that are around you. And a lot of these things will kind of take care of themselves.
All right, very good. Are there any final pieces of advice that you would give to your U students, alums, and the university community before we wrap things up tonight? If my wife was here in the room right now, some of these things she'd say bingo, because I have a couple sayings, and you could probably fill a bingo card. But I'll start with opportunity or success is where opportunity meets preparation. And so, if you stay humble and you stay hungry, and you're just diligent in your objectives, and you're clear of the goals that you set, and you are constantly seeking self-improvement, a lot of these things are going to kind of run themselves. None of this happens overnight. And a lot of us don't know what the next 10 years are going to look like. 10 years ago, I couldn't have told you that I'm going to be where I'm at now. 10 years before that, absolutely off my radar. And so what that has taught me is that you just continue to keep your head down, grind out, do good work. And at some point, there'll be an intersection where those things happen. It could be a professor at Upper Iowa that, convinces you to take the LSAT on a whim. It could be a random stranger that calls you out of the middle of nowhere while your office is in the middle of a remodel that says, hey, do you want to talk to my people? But be open to those things. Don't be so locked in on what your finish line is that you miss an opportunity that comes out that looks a little different than what you were expecting, because life is a weird adventure. It takes lots of different turns, and if you just stay humble and you stay hungry, more often than not, things are going to work themselves out. All right. I think that is a very good point to end this evening's speaker series on. So I would like to thank you again, Jeremy, for joining us this evening. If there are any individuals that are interested in connecting with you or reaching out to you in regards to any of the things that you have talked about tonight, I know that Jeremy can be found on LinkedIn. And so feel free to connect with him there as well. And he would be happy to provide his additional expertise and additional resources that he has available to him and that would be willing to connect with you. So I would encourage anyone to reach out to Jeremy if they have additional questions and additional ways that they want to network. And again, thank you all for joining us for the Alumni Speaker Series. And we hope you will join us again next month when we round out our spring series in May. So everyone have a wonderful night, and thanks again.
Thanks. Take care.